Quito, South Africa, where the issue of racism has been on the front burner in the country over the past years. During the apartheid era, the South African government was seen as flagrantly discriminating and implementing policies on the basis of race in the interest of white supremacy. But in 1959, an organized countrywide protest by black people ensued against race-based passed laws which prohibited free movement in the country, which subjected black people to carry passbooks that stated which towns and cities they could and could not access.
Well, in a bid to ensure the protection of citizens' rights, Anti-Racism Network South Africa, ANSA, launched a campaign to ensure that there is a countrywide focus on tackling racism in South Africa. Joining us to speak on anti-racism in South Africa is Tariq Jenkins. He is the High Commissioner of Khoikhoi Indigenous Traditional Council. He joins us this morning. Thank you for being here, Tariq. Now, it's been 28 years since South Africa entered into a democracy. What are the persistent contributing factors that continue to heighten the racism in the country?
Thank you very much, Joe and Oluchi, for having me on your show this morning. I think that we are dealing with the kind of systemic fault lines of an apartheid state, where, especially during the context of COVID over the last 2 years, we've seen these fault lines sort of surface again, where the structural racism and the extent to which poor working class black communities are were the hardest hit in terms of the pandemic, I think has given us a very sure sort of indication around the extent to which we have a lot of work to do in as far as resolving these particular kinds of issues. From our perspective, one of the key things is the extent to which the narrow-minded ethno-nationalism and the Verwoerdian propaganda, which was brought to the fore during apartheid, including the extent to which various forms of colonial administration over hundreds of years in South Africa have caused very serious racial problems. For example, in 1911, 1912, the term so-called colored was implemented, and basically this subsumed a whole range of San and Khoi groupings, including communities who were forcibly removed from across the oceans and came to this country as slaves from the Java, Madagascar, Goa, East and West Africa. And terms like this have ostensibly divested and divorced communities of their Africanness. And, over periods of time, we see the manifestation of this kind of intergenerational disinformation that has, in many ways, distanced communities from their African self, especially within the context of the Western Cape. And then, the extent to which the political will is present in as far as really dealing with the root causes of the kinds of racial tensions that we see in this country, is also something that has remained a tremendous challenge. I mean, one cannot distance the issue of class, economy, and the fact that the means of production in so many ways since 1994 has not necessarily shifted over to most people in our country, and so the relationship between race, class, and power is still something that is very acute in our country. And on Human Rights Day, we celebrated the Sharpeville massacre. We also begin to look at how far have we come in as far as establishing in an embodied way a nation that is moving towards healing and unity. But for the San and Khoi communities and for the indigenous communities in the Western Cape, recently there has been a symbolic victory in as far as the recognition of indigenous rights. For example, there has been a very controversial High Court interdict case against an Amazon.com proposed development in observatory in Cape Town, where they would want to put the African headquarters, and it includes 150,000 square meters of concrete bulk on a floodplain, on a place where land was actually stolen for the very first time in our country in 1657. It's where the first frontier wars were fought in 1659, and where liberation and resistance was fought in 1510. And I think part of the reason why indigenous communities have really objected to this development is because it would ostensibly silence a very important narrative that would draw us to where land was stolen for the first time, where dispossession took place when the frontier wars broke out in this particular precinct, which is on the embankments of the Liesbeek and Black River in Cape Town, and why, for example, we are still sitting with untold narratives of the genocide of the Cape Town, of massacre, forced removals, and ethnic cleansing of indigenous communities in South Africa.
All right,
and I think
Tariq, permit me to cut in here. Well, so far so good. I mean, we've been listening, and you've talked about where it's coming from, emanating from, what has been done, and of course, you talked about what has been raised in order to ensure that certain areas or level of concern is also met. But let me ask this question: Why does it really exist? Just why does racism really exist for the black people right there in South Africa?
The racism is a manufactured a piece of sort of colonial intrusion that across the continent has played a particular role in terms of ensuring a particular kind of divisiveness. Now, in as far as how we would want to locate the sort of the origins of racism is really in terms of how Black and indigenous communities were disenfranchised in ways where they were viewed as being entities that do not possess any form of spiritual, intellectual, and civil capacity. And it is this sort of trope that had negated the human aspect of who we are as Africans to serve a particular agenda, where the acquisition of mineral resources, of land resources.
I mean, Tariq, I need to come in here at this point because some people believe that racism actually existed before the colonists came into the continent of Africa. I mean, looking at how the South African government has actually tried to combat racism and other intolerance. I know that the government in 2019, February, they announced the approval of the National Action Plan, the NAP, and we have been monitoring it to see just how effective it has been thus far. We've also seen a recent report by the World Bank, which ranks South Africa as the most economically unequal country in the world. The report came out to say that race is the key driver of this reality, with 10% of the population owning and controlling 80% of the country's economy. What's the situation on the ground when it comes to Black people being excluded financially from navigating everyday life? All right, Tariq, I think we just have a little bit of technical glitch from his end, but he was telling us his region, Khoi province, and how they've been trying their best to navigate racism in the country. And he came out to blame racism to the colonial era and to the colonists who came in. But people believe that racism was actually in the continent of Africa prior to colonists coming into the country. I mean, it happened in between the tribes, in between the people, among the leaders and the people as well.
Well, that's one thing that he's also mentioned too, the fact that a lot is being done to ensure that racism is indeed taken out completely, stamped out completely, especially in South Africa. But we will dwell more on this topic, Tariq, looking at the fact that a lot is being done and looking at the anti-racism plans that have been put in place. But let's quickly use this opportunity to also talk to you on a major topic that's actually emanated this morning from South Africa. Amazon.com, as we know it, definitely globally. We hear that Amazon is actually having its headquarters stopped there in South Africa, First Nations Sand and also Khoi in Cape Town. How true is this story that Amazon has actually been stopped? Is this does it have any clarity?
Yes, there has been a High Court interdict that was put against the proposed Amazon headquarters on the embankments of the Liesbeek River. The local developer is called the Liesbeek Leisure Property Trust, and they have been in deeper solidarity with the city of Cape Town and the provincial government. One of the major problems about the site that has been chosen is that it is considered an epicenter of liberation and resistance for the San and Khoi. It is also a place where dispossession happened in its first instance in 1657, and it was where the Frontier Wars broke out in 1659. It is a site that has been approved by President Cyril Ramaphosa and his cabinet as part of the National Khoi and San Liberation and Resistance Route, part of which has been slated to UNESCO as a World Heritage Site. So indigenous communities, San and Khoi, have been vehemently objected against this development because of its inappropriate size and scale that wants to put 150,000 square meters of concrete bulk on a floodplain, which actually violates a climate change mitigation policy. It violates the Paris Agreement. It also is in contradiction to our own national and provisional sort of environmental policies. It also includes the infill and desecration of one of the sacred rivers. And so the Observatory Civic Association and the Gore Naikona Khoi Traditional Council launched an urgent interdict to stop this development, and it was done in two parts, which was an interdict and then a review. So currently the bulldozers have been stopped. All construction has been halted pending the review, and this is viewed as a major sort of victory at this point against the threat of what is considered to be, a permanent devastation of intangible and tangible heritage resources, which are extremely valuable, not just to the San and Khoi, but to the collective memory of all South Africans, considering that this is a space that the San and Khoi would identify as the etchings of where the Khoi Holocaust occurred and where the eventual genocide of the Cape San happened. It is from here that in 1659, when the Frontier Wars broke out, it precipitated over about 200 years of liberations, of war, and resistance in our country. And so it is very important that the intense spiritual and physical heritage resources that are, that are on this particular terrain remain protected. It is unfortunate that up until this point, a lot of damage has been done, but we are confident that we'll move into the review, and I think with the announcement of the interdict, the review prospects are looking favorable.
All right. Thank you so much for talking to us. We really appreciate your presence here, for being here and also sharing the ideas and also the anti-racism, not forgetting to giving us an update concerning the Amazon.com's construction being halted. Thank you, Tariq, for talking to us.